The wind on Glather 9 didn't just howl. It screamed like the planet itself was warning something was terribly wrong. And in the middle of that frozen wasteland, where no life had existed for decades, came a sound that didn't belong. A child's cry, soft, trembling, impossibly real. But this wasn't just any child. Her tears floated before freezing. Her skin shimmered like starlight. And the moment Commander Brooke Langley found her, buried beneath ice and silence, the clock started ticking. Something was coming. Something ancient. And this girl, this fragile, glowing girl, was the key to everything humanity had tried to forget. Before we start, aliens hide the answer in plain sight. Can you outsmart them? Crack the pinned comment question to prove humanity's brain power reigns supreme. Watch every second, or let the cosmos laugh at us. I'll be waiting your answer. Oh yes. Please, please and please. Hit that card button in the top right corner to subscribe now. And be sure to ring the notification bell so you never miss a single one of our epic daily stories the moment they drop. Let's dive in the story. The wind howled like it was angry at the world. Icy needles stabbed down from the sky, turning every breath into a frozen knife. But beneath all that chaos, something else cut through the storm, something soft. A sound that shouldn't exist. It was faint, like a whisper caught in the wind. But it was there, crying. Commander Brooke Langley froze mid-step. Her boots crunched the frost beneath her, but the sound wasn't coming from her. She tilted her head, straining to hear again. What was that? She murmured. Drew Riker, trudging beside her in the blinding whiteout, frowned beneath his frost-covered hood. His beard was stiff with ice, his voice sharp and uncertain. You hear that too? Brooke's hand went to the side of her helmet, adjusting the receiver. The cry returned. Longer this time. Closer. That's not wind. That's a child. Brooke, Drew said slowly, lowering his thermal goggles. We're on Glather 9. Nobody lives here anymore. It's a dead planet. She shot him a glare. Well, something's alive, and it sounds like it's freezing to death. Yeah? Or luring us into a trap. You remember Vega Prime? Brooke raised a brow, lips curling into a smirk. Vega Prime was your idea, and we ended up waist-deep in carnivorous fog. He snorted. Still think about that thing trying to eat my leg. Then keep your legs moving. They pushed forward through the blizzard, past shattered ice, spires, and rock formations carved by time and cold. Every now and then, the wind would die just long enough to let the crying sneak through again, each time more desperate. Brooke's visor flickered. The scanner blinked to life. Life form detected. Small. Stationary. 25 meters. Drew's fingers tightened around his rifle. This place gives me the creeps. You sure this isn't some glitch? Nope, but I'm not leaving a kid in a storm like this. The path ahead narrowed into a jagged ridge. Sharp, icy walls curved like teeth, forming a frozen mouth that led into a shadowy cave. Blue light shimmered faintly inside. You want me to go first? Drew offered, voice tight. No, Brooke said, stepping in. If something's waiting, it'll see me coming and get confused. He chuckled. Confused by what? That I look this good in -70 temperatures. He rolled his eyes. Still got that attitude, huh? It's kept me alive this long. Inside the cave, silence returned. The storm couldn't reach them here. The walls glowed faintly, casting strange reflections that danced like ghosts. Then they saw her, curled into a corner, hidden behind a wall of fractured crystal, was a child. Her skin shimmered silver blue, veins glowing beneath like tiny rivers of light. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and shimmering tears, tears that hovered midair before freezing into perfect little orbs. Oh my God, Brooke whispered. The child looked up at her with terror, then reached out a tiny hand. And that's when Brooke knew. This wasn't just a rescue. This was the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could imagine. Brooke stepped closer, kneeling down beside the strange child as gently as possible. The temperature in the cave was still bone-chilling, but her suit kept her steady. The child looked no older than 7, though her alien features made it hard to tell. Her silver blue skin shimmered like starlight, and her breath came out in short, rapid bursts. "She's freezing," Brooke muttered. Drew crouched behind her, glancing around the glowing cave with his rifle ready. His eyes narrowed on the floating frozen tears hanging in the air like fragile ornaments. "That's not natural," he said. "Tears don't float before they freeze. Not even here." Brooke ignored him. She reached out, slow and calm, offering her gloved hand. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe now," she said, voice soft. "I'm Brooke. What's your name?" The child didn't speak. Her lips trembled, and her tiny fingers clutched the jagged edge of a cracked crystal. Her violet eyes stared at Brooke like she was something out of a dream or a memory. Drew stepped closer, pulling out a portable heater from his pack. "If she doesn't talk soon, we're gonna need to carry her." That core storm outside's gaining speed. Brooke reached out and gently touched the child's shoulder. The skin was cold, but not brittle. It felt warm beneath the surface, like something was burning deep inside her. The child flinched. Then her hand shot up, grabbing Brooke's wrist. Her fingers were delicate, but strong. Brooke froze. "It's okay," she whispered, not moving. "I've got you." The child slowly let go. Her expression shifted. Not just fear. There was something else. Recognition. Brooke's heart skipped. Did she just... "She knows you." Drew cut in, raising an eyebrow. "Did you meet this kid before? On some mission?" Brooke shook her head. "Never. I would remember a face like that." She turned her attention back to the scanner on her wrist. It was blinking red now. Something wasn't right. "Drew, look at this." He leaned in. No ID match. No species classification. No record of her DNA in the entire UCN database. "Then what the hell is she?" Brooke whispered. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the cave opening. But it wasn't wind. It was too controlled, too deliberate. A hum followed it. Low, vibrating, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Drew stood up fast, his grip tightening on the rifle. We're not alone. Outside, beyond the ridge of ice, a shadow moved. Tall, slender, watching. Brooke stood, putting herself between the child and the entrance. "You see that?" she asked. "I see it," Drew muttered. "Question is, does it see us?" The shadow didn't move. Then it tilted its head in a way no creature should. Brooke felt the air change. The child whimpered, curling tighter into the wall behind her. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't just watching. It was waiting, and they just stepped into something far darker than a rescue mission. Drew stepped back toward the cave wall, eyes locked on the figure outside. The shape was wrong. Too thin, too tall. Limbs moved like branches in the wind, slow, twitchy, unnatural. It didn't make a sound, didn't breathe, just stared from the edge of the storm. Brooke lowered her visor, activating enhanced optics. "There's more than one," she said grimly. "How many?" Drew asked. 3, maybe 4, but only one showing its full shape. The others are staying behind the drift. Drew flicked the safety off his rifle. "I don't like this." "You think I do?" Brooke snapped. "This cave is a trap if they come closer. We need to move. Now." The child trembled again. Brooke turned to her quickly. Hey, look at me," she said, kneeling again. "You got to come with us, all right? We're gonna get you out of here." The child didn't speak. She just nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the cave entrance, as if she already knew what was out there. Brooke scooped her up gently, her arms firm but careful. The girl was lighter than she looked, almost weightless. The warmth under her skin had grown stronger, like something was waking up inside her. Drew scanned the back of the cave. We could blow through the east wall, open up a tunnel to the ridge. Brooke nodded. "Do it." Drew pulled a thermal charge from his belt and slapped it against the frozen rock. "You ever think you'd be back on a death world hauling around mystery kids and ghost aliens?" he muttered. Brooke smirked. "Honestly, this is still better than the diplomatic mission on Cirrus 6. Drew groaned. "Ugh, don't remind me. Those people talked in riddles for 7 hours. Try negotiating with someone who lays eggs in your boots. Fair point. The thermal charge beeped twice. Fire in 3, 2. The blast was sharp, silent, and clean. Ice shattered like glass, sending shards scattering down a fresh tunnel. They moved fast. Brooke led the way, carrying the child close to her chest, while Drew covered the rear with his rifle raised. The walls glowed dimly with bioluminescent frost, casting eerie shadows that twisted and crawled behind them. Then Drew stopped. "Brooke, they're following." She turned, heart pounding. The watchers had entered the cave, but they didn't chase. They glided, slow, deliberate, patient. "They're hurting us," Drew said. "Into what?" Brooke hissed. The child's eyes opened wide. She turned her face into Brooke's shoulder and whispered something. Just a single word in a language Brooke didn't know. But it chilled her to the bone. "What did she say?" Drew asked. Brooke swallowed hard. "I don't know, but the way the girl said it, like a memory, like a warning." They turned and kept moving deeper into the tunnel. The watchers didn't follow fast. They didn't need to, because they knew exactly where Brooke and Drew were going, and they were going to be waiting. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber, shielded from the blizzard outside. Cracked crystal pillars jutted out from the ground like broken teeth, glowing faintly with a soft amber light. Drew immediately set up the portable heater near the far wall. It hummed to life, casting waves of warmth that turned the frost on their suits into glistening droplets. Brooke knelt beside the child and gently unwrapped the thermal wrap she'd secured during the escape. The girl didn't flinch this time. She stared at the heater like it was magic. "You feel that?" Brooke asked softly. "It's heat. You're safe here." The child reached a hand toward the warmth, her tiny fingers stretching out. Her eyes shimmered again, not with tears, but awe. Drew kept his rifle on his lap, watching both the entrance and the strange girl. "She hasn't said a word since that one whisper," he muttered. "You sure she understands us?" "She understands plenty," Brooke said. "Look at her. She's not just scared, she's thinking." Drew leaned back against the slanted crystal. What kind of kid doesn't cry, scream, or panic when monsters start chasing her? Brooke didn't answer. She was focused on the girl's forearm. A faint symbol, barely visible under her glowing skin, was pulsing with slow, rhythmic light. "Drew," she said, her voice low, "come look at this." He walked over, squinting down at the symbol. "That looks like a lab ran," Brooke finished. "Old tech. Human-made." Drew's brows pulled together. "Brooke, why does a little alien girl have a human biotech imprint on her?" She stood slowly, lips pressed into a hard line. "I don't know, but I've seen this symbol before." "Where?" She looked up at him, her voice quiet. "I don't remember." The child suddenly turned and looked at Brooke. She placed her hand gently on Brooke's chest, right above her heart. Her touch was warm now, almost burning. Brooke froze. "What is she doing?" Drew asked, but Brooke didn't speak. Images began flashing through her mind, too fast to grab, like memories from someone else's life. A white room, a humming tank, a voice calling out her name. Then it was gone. Brooke gasped and stumbled back. The child blinked slowly, as if nothing had happened. "Okay," Drew said, stepping in. "That's enough alien magic for one day." Brooke steadied herself. "She showed me something. Just a glimpse." "Of what?" "I don't know, but I think I was there. Wherever she came from, I think I was part of it." Drew stared at her. "That doesn't make sense." Brooke looked toward the tunnel they came from. "None of this does." Suddenly, a deep rumble echoed through the walls. Not from a storm. This was different, closer. Drew grabbed his rifle again. "We got movement. Multiple signatures." Brooke turned to the child. "We can't stay here." The girl nodded. Not out of fear, out of understanding. She already knew what was coming. And, somehow, she knew what they had to do next. The chamber walls quaked again, sending ice dust drifting from above. A low groan echoed through the tunnel they came from, like something massive was dragging itself across the frozen stone. Drew was already up and scanning, his jaw clenched. "They're here," he said. "I count 5 signatures. Fast move us." Brooke turned toward the child, who stood now without fear, eyes locked on the cave entrance. That symbol on her arm was pulsing faster, the glow becoming more intense. "She's reacting to them," Brooke said. "You think they're connected?" Drew asked. "They didn't attack her. Just us." "Yeah, well, I'm not waiting around to find out if they're bringing friends." He pulled a flare disc from his side pouch and tapped it once. The disc whirred to life, launching down a narrow passage on the far side of the chamber. It lit up the tunnel ahead in bursts of orange and green, showing a steep slope that led upward, an escape route. Brooke turned to the girl. "We have to go. Now." The child hesitated for just a second, then stepped forward. Not frightened. "Ready." Brooke scooped her up, and they ran. The air behind them trembled. That same hum returned, louder, vibrating through their bones. Brooke didn't look back, but she felt it. The Watchers were gaining. "I've got 30 seconds on the sled beacon," Drew shouted over the rising noise. "Once it finds us, we got to hold position." Brooke's boots pounded the ice. Her breath came hard and fast. "You think it can land in this storm? If it doesn't, we're about to become freeze-dried history." They broke out of the tunnel onto a ridge overlooking a frozen basin. Snow lashed their visors, and visibility was nearly zero. But the child suddenly reached out from Brooke's arms and pointed straight ahead. "There!" Brooke gasped, adjusting her course. Drew skidded to a stop beside her and tapped his earpiece. "Sled's on approach." 2 minutes. A shadow surged behind them. Brooke whirled around, rifle raised. One of the Watchers stepped into view. Its skin shimmered like black glass, tall and skeletal, with glowing veins that pulsed just like the girls. It tilted its head, analyzing them. Then it stepped forward. Brooke fired. The plasma bolt struck the figure in the chest, but instead of collapsing, it absorbed the shot. The life from the impact sank into its body like water into sand. Drew shouted, "That's new." The Watcher raised one long arm, and Brooke felt the world slow. But then, the child let out a soft cry. A wave of blinding white light burst from her body, washing over the Watcher like a tidal wave of energy. The creature let out a shriek, not of pain, but shock, then disintegrated into 1,000 glittering fragments that floated up into the wind. Silence returned. Brooke stared in disbelief. What the hell did she just do? The child looked up at her. "I protected you," she said softly. Drew gawked. Did she just talk? Brooke couldn't breathe. And above them, in the sky, the escape sled's lights finally cut through the storm. The sled's rear hatch hissed open as it hovered just above the frozen ridge. Wind howled past the landing struts, kicking snow in every direction. Drew climbed in first, turning to cover Brooke as she carried the girl inside. "Go, go, go!" he yelled over the roar. Brooke jumped onto the platform, cradling the child tight to her chest. The hatch slammed shut behind them with a heavy thunk, sealing out the storm. Inside, the sled was dimly lit, the interior shaking as it ascended. Drew collapsed into the co-pilot's seat, pulling off his frost-covered gloves. His fingers trembled, not from the cold, but from adrenaline. Brooke sat across from him, holding the girl close. Her eyes, wide and glowing faintly, stared at the floor in silence. "Well," Drew panted, "that was fun. Let's never do it again." Brooke gave a short laugh under her breath. "She saved us, Drew. That thing, whatever it was, she destroyed it like it was made of dust." "Yeah, I saw it." He leaned forward, pointing at the girl's arm. "And that thing glowing on her? That's a human military project tag. Same kind used in Black Ops experiments before the Union banned them." Brooke looked down at the girl, who now rested quietly in her arms. "I remember something," she said. "Not clearly, but when she touched me back in the cave, I saw flashes. A white room. Machines. I heard voices. You think you were part of whatever made her?" "I don't know. Maybe I was a soldier. A handler. Maybe a scientist. But I was there." Drew's voice dropped. "Brooke, that symbol on her arm. I saw it once too. on a file marked Project Echo. It was buried deep, classified above my level. They shut it down 15 years ago. Said it was too unstable. Brooke's pulse quickened. Echo. That's what she said in the cave. When she whispered, it must have been a fragment of that memory. Drew narrowed his eyes. She's not just an alien. She's part human. Brooke's breath caught. What? Think about it. The pulse. The way she connects to you. The biosignature, partly familiar, but untraceable. Brooke looked at the girl, gently brushing snow-damp hair from her face. She said something after she saved us. I protected you. That wasn't instinct. That was love. The child stirred, blinking up at Brooke. I dreamed about you, she whispered, her voice soft as starlight. They said you would come back. Brooke's eyes filled with something she hadn't felt in years. Warmth. A bond she didn't understand but couldn't deny. The sled jolted as it broke atmosphere, rising toward the orbital station above the planet. Drew looked at the monitor, then back at them. We got incoming. Brooke's heart tightened. What kind? He paused. Not ships. Not weapons. A signal. Someone's broadcasting. Brooke's voice was steady. Put it through. Static crackled. Then a distorted voice came through the speakers. Return the subject, or face annihilation. The child flinched. Brooke stood slowly, arms tightening protectively. No one's taking her. Not again. Alarms blared inside the sled as the comms repeated the threat, louder this time. Return the subject, or face annihilation. Brooke stood still, feet planted, arms wrapped protectively around the girl as the voice echoed through the small cabin. The child trembled, pressing her face against Brooke's chest. Drew stared at the screen in disbelief. They tracked us. Through the storm, through the ridge, they knew exactly where she was. And they knew we'd come for her, Brooke said. Her voice was cold now, focused. The child looked up, her glowing eyes searching Brooke's face. You don't have to fight, she whispered. I could go back. I don't want them to hurt you. Brooke knelt down, brushing her hand across the girl's cheek. No, you're not going back to anyone. You're with us now. The sled reached orbit, docking with their cruiser. The hatch opened with a hiss, revealing the gray metallic corridor of the ship. Crew members stared in shock as the trio emerged. Brooke in her battle-worn suit, Drew with his rifle slung over his shoulder, and the strange, glowing child between them. Captain Lynn, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp green eyes, approached quickly. Commander Langley, she barked, what the hell have you brought aboard my ship? A miracle, Brooke said quietly, and a mistake we have to make right. The crew cleared the path to the command deck, where holograms lit up with warning lights. Hostile fleet approaching, the AI announced. 17 vessels. Origin, classified black sector. Drew turned to Brooke. That's them. They won't let her go, she said. They didn't come to negotiate. The child stepped forward slowly. Her voice was steady now. I was made to be a weapon. Everyone in the room fell silent. But I don't want to hurt anyone. That's why they left me. That's why they were afraid. Brooke stepped beside her. You don't have to be what they made you. You can choose who you want to be now. The girl reached her hand toward the central console, and as her fingers touched the surface, the entire ship shimmered. Lights flickered. Systems froze. Time itself seemed to pause. A new voice echoed, not mechanical, not human. It was her voice, amplified, resonating through every frequency. You tried to erase me. You buried me in the cold. But I remember now. I remember all of you, and I am not yours. Outside, the approaching fleet halted. Then, one by one, the enemy ships began to flicker and vanish. Not explode, not flee. They simply ceased to exist, gone without a trace. The lights stabilized. The sled's systems returned, and silence filled the deck. Drew blinked. What just happened? The girl looked up at him. I ended them. Brooke stared at her, realization dawning like sunlight through clouds. She wasn't just part of Project Echo. She was Project Echo. The child nodded. I was the last. The only one who survived. Captain Lynn whispered, What do we do with her now? Brooke smiled softly. We don't do anything. She stays with us. She's not a weapon. She's hope. The girl's eyes shimmered, no longer with fear, but peace. Brooke looked down at her. What's her name? The child hesitated, then smiled. Kaylin. Brooke wrapped her arm around her. Welcome home, Kaylin. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, something ancient stirred, watching, waiting. But for now, Kaylin was safe, and the storm had passed. Here is the story ends. If you enjoyed and want to watch more thrilling sci-fi adventures, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Dive into epic battles, explore distant galaxies, and join brave heroes as they fight for survival against impossible odds. Let us know in comments if you want next chapters to publish soon. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and become part of the journey. Together, we'll keep the last light burning. Subscribe now and let the adventure continue.